Welcome up to the show tonight, guys. It's Studio 321. This is your host, Eddie B. Okay, so China's three-pronged attack on the United States. Okay, the war that we're fighting now is not the war that we would fight on a battlefield. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But remember, guys, please hit the like and subscribe button. Subscribe to my channel. It's free, but it does help spread the word. Gets the word, like-minded people. We got to stick together, so we got to get the word out there. All right, so let's get down to it. So, China's three-pronged attack on the United States. Again, war has changed more from a physical thing between, the big countries like us and China to more of an economic thing, kind of like the Cold War between us and Russia. Okay? But here's the way China's waging their war against us. And the reason I wanted to do this show is because I'm constantly online and I see a lot of people really sympathizing with the Chinese government, saying stuff like we're picking on their students because we want to revoke their visas, and we're being mean to the Chinese, and we're the bullies, right? And I guess if you don't know any of this backstory, or you don't know what's actually going on, you might think that's true, right? Because it just looks like we're trying to throw all these Chinese people out of the country for no reason. And all that stuff, right? So, again, without knowing what's really going on the inside, it looks kind of like we're the bad guys. But this is how it's really going, and I'm going to break that down for you. Okay, so to start, we got to go back a little bit so I can start at the beginning. So, in December 11, 2001, China was allowed into the World Trade Organization. Okay, that was a huge deal for China. 166 countries in the World Trade Organization. Now, I spoke about this on some previous podcasts, but I got to lay the groundwork so you can understand where I'm coming from. 166 members in the World Trade Organization. It's basically an organization that, has trade rules and laws between all the countries around the world. Keeps everything smooth. Our tariffs, all our trade deficits, all that stuff, all worked out through the World Trade Organization, okay? So, we wanted to let China into the World Trade Organization because the idea behind that was China at the time was a very large, predominantly poor country, largest population in the world, industrialized, but not to its potential, but had a lot of potential, huge land mass, and again, a gigantic workforce who was at that time is eager to work. So our idea was we let them in the World Trade Organization. We kind of buddy up to them. We wanted a powerhouse friend in Asia, ally, if you will. And we already had Japan and Korea, but China's a massive, massive country with a massive population. So our idea was to make friends with them and create a huge ally in that region of the world. And we also thought that if we buddied up with them and traded with them, as a close partner, that they would start to shy away from communism and become more capitalist like us, which it ended up actually, that whole scenario ended up blowing up in our face. And we also gave them favored nation trading status. We actually let them take advantage of us in a lot of ways. Their trade deals with us were basically slanted towards them, which we actually did that on purpose. Because again, we were trying to build them up to make a friend in Asia, and that way we could, use them on that side of the world if we ever needed to fight Russia or anything like that. But that entire thing blew up in our face. They actually went more communist as they got more powerful, and now, they're not just powerful. They're actually just trying to take over the lead in the world, and they're super ultra aggressive on the way they attack other countries economically. So they get in December 11, 2001, and so that starts their major growth, okay? Now they have the three-pronged attack. The first prong was the economic attack, okay? Now this is what they do, okay? They steal our technology constantly, okay? The United States has always been very lucky. We have a ton of innovators, people who really build and invent nice things. Okay, I think it's capitalism drives that over here, people trying to make that dollar. So the Chinese constantly steal our tech from us. Well, how do they do that? Well, we invent a product, they get a hold of the product immediately, and they reverse engineer it, and then they ship and then they sell it back to our country, or they make copycat products, and then they sell those back into our country. Now they build the product with much cheaper labor and less regulation, so it doesn't cost nearly as much for them to build the exact same product that we do. So then they ship it back into our country and sell it here, and they basically destroy our companies by doing that, because nobody buys the American built one because it's twice the price. And the Chinese ones, which everybody knows Chinese goods aren't usually quite as good, but they're good enough for the price. So that is one way it it destroys our companies. Now, they doing the copycat stuff, and I got an example of that I'm going to give to you. So Boeing, the plane manufacturer, they build a lot of the airliners for all around the world, really. China had offered to build a Boeing plant in China for free. Now they were going to outfit the whole thing, and that's, you're talking billions and billions of dollars, and they wanted our people to come over there and teach them how to build airliners and these factories. And when I saw that, now this was years ago, I saw this going on, and I was like, man, that's a mistake, because Boeing, at the time had the world market cornered in airliner manufacturing. Well, I knew what China was doing. I'm sure our government knew what they were doing. They're going to build factories. They're going to bring over our people. They're going to teach their people how to build these planes. And then, at the end of the day, they're going to end up kicking us out and building their own planes and then selling their planes back to us cheaper than Boeing can sell them. And that's a perfect example of how they do things to try to undercut, our pricing, and it really hurts companies all over the United States. And again, remember, going back to the tariffs, there was no tariffs to bring them into the U.S., so they could ship stuff back in here for free and sell it. So, that's a huge problem. It always has been, and it's going on right now as we speak. Okay, now another one is the manipulation of our currency. Okay, what they do is they constantly try, by manipulating markets, to devalue the American dollar. And what happens with that is, the American dollar is the standard for the world right now. Okay, when you devalue it enough, it loses its I don't know how you say it. It loses its power around the world. Okay, Chinese, they're trying to get their currency value up because they want to take over that standard. And if that ever does happen, it's going to crush our economy 100%. Like that's a doomsday scenario. So we have to, we need the strongest currency in the world. American currency has always been the standard for the world, and we cannot afford to have that get replaced by the Chinese currency. Okay, so the second part of their attack is the cultural attack. Okay, I call it the TikTok culture. And again, that's why lawmakers in the United States are looking to ban TikTok. It's not because they don't want young people having fun. It's not any of that silly stuff. What it is that's a Chinese-owned company, and what TikTok does, or what the algorithm was doing, was, let's say you were in China and you looked up, arts and crafts on TikTok, right? To the Chinese kids, they would see like girls drawing and boys doing, painting and awesome, type of stuff like that, and ballet and things like that. If you typed in that same thing in America on TikTok, you'd see some girl twerking, looking like a stripper, doing all this weird stuff, just foul things. And so the idea behind that was, and what they've been trying to do is they've tried to pump garbage culture into our country. Okay, and this is not a joke. This is why they're trying to outlaw TikTok. They do it on every level. So anytime, like, with the Chinese kids, they would type in something, and it would show kids doing math and science and science experiments, and then you type in, you know, same thing on an American TikTok site, and it would show like punks gang banging and nasty behavior and just bad behavior type stuff. And you have to think about it. You think, oh, well, what's the big deal about that? But we have millions and millions of kids who sit on TikTok all day long. And that's what they're learning at 8, 10, 12 years old. Okay? Over in China, they're teaching them, art and math and all that stuff. And so what's going on is they feel like by pumping constant garbage into our culture, there's that old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, that's what you're going to get. And then you're going to have a generations of kids who grow up who just, they cannot compete with anything, anybody else in the world. Also, they're starting to figure out that a lot of the universities in the United States have a lot, they're getting a lot of money from Chinese government entities, okay? And what happens when that happens is you get a lot of influence. So, Chinese are able to influence our colleges, which also influences our culture. You have all these students out protesting this. They're becoming anti-American. And after doing a deep dive into all this, you're starting to realize that a lot of this anti-American sentiment is funded by Chinese government entities in our own country, okay? Now, the universities are crying about it because they want all that Chinese money. And see, that's what happens. They get people addicted to that money, and then all of a sudden they're on their side. Why do you think, they had that whole controversy some time ago with I think it was LeBron James or something, and talking about all the shoes, you know what I mean? And they're not going to badmouth China. Why? Because all the shoes that they sell more shoes in China than they do in the United States. A lot of people don't realize that either. So the real war is there. It's an economic battle. It's a cultural battle. You know what I mean? People don't even realize it because we just live our daily lives and we think that everything's just hunky-dory all the time, but it's not. But to be honest, this is pretty normal. It's geopolitics. That's how countries try to get over on each other. One wants to take the power. They're trying to overtake the other one, and these are the games they play. And I'm sure that we play it too. We play with other countries all the time. But that's what China is doing to us right now. Now, the third part of this attack, I call it the chemical attack. Okay. It's the drugs and the pathogens, okay? Number one, nobody's ever going to convince me that COVID wasn't done on purpose, okay? Think about, all you have to do is look at the timing of that. COVID happened to just come out right before Trump's second run for office, right? Everybody said because the economy was so good, everything was so good, at the end of Trump's first term, that he basically was a shoo-in for the presidency. But he has taken such a hard stance against China that I would bet anything that they released that the virus, the COVID virus, on purpose at that time to create havoc. It was kind of like a Hail Mary pass into the United States to wreak havoc, because the only way to dethrone Trump at that time was to create some kind of massive event in the United States where they could, pump in propaganda and anti-Trump and this and that. And it worked. It worked. So yeah, the COVID was the first thing. Now, the second one, which is it's like a constant slow death, is fentanyl, okay? Think about that. All the ingredients from fentanyl come from China. Now, China is a country that if you get caught manufacturing drugs in China or selling drugs in China, you get an automatic death penalty. If you don't believe me, you can go online and watch videos of them executing Chinese drug dealers. It's pretty hardcore over there. They don't play around with that. So, but what they do is they allow these manufacturers to manufacture the chemicals to make fentanyl, which they ship to Mexico. Then the Mexican cartels and all the dealers down there put all the ingredients together, make the fentanyl, pump it over our border into the United States, where it's killing 200,000 people a year. Now, they say now with the border being closed down, they've gotten fentanyl down to about 50%, which is fantastic. But so, it was killing about 200,000 people a year. But what was it also doing? It was creating havoc among our cultures, unrest in the cities and towns, unmotivated people that don't want to work. People start stealing, fighting, for drug money. It creates chaos within communities, and that is the real point. Okay, and again, we, as normal folks, we don't think this type of stuff is happening or real, but this is real stuff. This is what's going on behind the scenes every day. Okay, now the pathogens. Just recently, and I'm gonna show you how easy this is to find. Recently, they had some Chinese researchers that got arrested for bringing in some dangerous pathogens into the United States. Now, this could be another COVID situation all over again. But don't take my word. I want you to listen to this. I'm going to bring this up on Google and listen to this. Hey, Google, tell me about the Chinese researchers that brought in pathogens from China, dangerous pathogens.
There have been recent developments regarding Chinese researchers abroad and their involvement with dangerous pathogens, particularly with respect to potential national security concerns. Specifically, in June 2025, 2 Chinese nationals, Yunqing Jian and Zunyong Liu, were charged by the U.S. Department of Justice for conspiracy and smuggling a dangerous biological pathogen, Fusarium graminearum, into the United States. They allegedly intended to conduct research on this pathogen at a University of Michigan laboratory. Here's a breakdown of the key points from these reports. The pathogen, Fusarium graminearum, is a fungus that causes head blight in crops like wheat, barley, maize, and rice. It is responsible for billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide each year. More concerningly, its toxins can cause vomiting, liver damage, and reproductive defects in humans and livestock. The U.S. Department of Justice has classified it as a potential agroterrorism weapon.
There you go. Don't take my word for it. You see what I'm saying, though? We don't realize this stuff, that it's going on, as we sleep, every day, every night. It's the constant battle between the countries. It's for economic power, okay? China has a plan. They call it the 100-year plan. You can look that up as well. That's they have the 100-year plan to take over the world, as far as just becoming number one like the United States. And for them to do that, they have to knock us off. And look, we're blessed in America, right? We have great land, we have fertile land for growing. We're pretty much self-sufficient if we need to be. We're surrounded by oceans, so you really can't invade us. I mean, it'd be almost impossible for an army to invade us. We have a lot of luxury in this country, and it makes us rich and powerful, so we're hard to stop. So a country like China, who wants to become number one, they have to look at it from a different angle. What they need to do is they need to pump a bunch of junk into our country and hopefully let our culture destroy itself. And that's what they're trying to do right now. It's a 3-pronged attack, okay? And we're finally getting hip to it. Obviously, the Trump administration has really slammed on the brakes, and they're fighting hard. They're fighting back. And I believe with 4 years of Trump, and then we get somebody in there that follows in those footsteps, I think we'll be able to turn the tables on this. I did a previous podcast where I said I don't think China's ever going to, come around to acting correctly. I feel like we are in a slow process of decoupling from China to become major trading partners with India, because India is way more friendly. They're more of an ally. They're not so sneaky all the time, and they have the same population as China. They're hungry for industrialization, and they're where China was in 2000 when we let them join the World Trade Organization. So I think we could do that. We could switch over to using them more than China, because China's just not, they're the way they're conducting business is it's nasty, okay? And we have to fight back. But the population in America needs to understand this, and they need to wake up and start realizing that we're not just bullies, okay? Yeah, we've done some bully stuff in the past. That's a fact, But with regards to China, we have to be real careful, man. If it was me, I'd revoke every Chinese student visa. I'd send every one of them back home, because that sends a message. Don't come over here with you playing your games, and but we'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting to see what goes on over the next year. But the struggle is real. This is not a joke, and we've got to stop this, or we're going to lose badly. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching my video. I hope you like it. I hope you learned a little something. I said it from Studio 321. I'll talk to you soon. Good night.